Oh, no, in front of you. We'll let him do it. Yes. Let's see who's in the audience out there.
I think he can do that.
I think he can.
Uh-oh.
Huh?
They're available. Yes, ma'am.
These are available too if you want them.
We prefer, Miss Saylor, we prefer the good players to sit there, though.
Oh, ow.
I saved this one for you, though. I will be jealous.
All right. We think we're about ready? Okay. Are you good, Carla? No? Okay. Let me know when you are.
Seat right there. Sherry.
You're good? Okay. Okay, so we will go ahead and call the commission meeting to order. And we will have Mr. Dobbs lead us in the invocation this evening, and we will have Mr. Mueller lead us in the pledge. Please rise.
Pray with me. Father, I thank you for tonight, the opportunity to discuss these matters that are important to our city, to our citizens. And I pray that you would bring wisdom in this meeting tonight, and that in all things that the people will be benefited by the meeting this evening and the decisions that are made. Thank you, Father, for our commission. Thank you for our city manager and for the other employees of the city that do such a great job to help us all out. We just ask you to bless this meeting tonight, and we thank you for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Carla, would you please call the roll? Here.
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 Thank you. Next is the agenda approval. If there are any items that need to be removed from the agenda or any changes that need to be made to the agenda, now would be the time to do so.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to change the order
Okay.
of the agenda, taking the, making member
Business item C.
business items, oh, the whole thing? I was just
No,
going
no.
to say business items.
I would just take just.
Okay, business item C, the utility rate discussion, and put it after the land use hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend the agenda by moving business item C to after the land use hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Next, we'll move into citizen recognition. Mr. Ray, we have lots of citizens here tonight.
We do.
Glad
This
to
is
see you.
fantastic. Mayor, we've been talking for at least 10 years that I'm aware of. If you look at the screen, we've been talking about this for 10 years. And what this is the culmination.
Did you ladies know we've been talking about you for 10 years?
I know we have been talking for
Just
quite some time.
curious.
Basically, they were in the 5th and 6th grade, and we talked about this amazing thing that could happen eventually with hard work, some skill, and a little bit of determination. And just we're excited to be able to do a recognition tonight. And it really steals some of that thunder, because on the board, after going 4 games, 4 wins and 0 losses, something we've not done in the last 6 years, there's always that couple of losses that seem to get this team. The Aztec High School girls softball team came back with a 5A state championship, and I think that's incredible. There's something about the girls' programs in Aztec that find a way to win, and I think that's something amazingly special. These pictures really show the culmination of that hard work, and really like I said, skill, time spent, and then craziness. That's also a key factor. I believe the championship game was 7-2. I think that's the final. And to win a championship game 7-2 is beyond comparison. I think that's one reason why we won 7-2 was that picture right there. It's an overall team sport. It's a phenomenal program builder. And sadly, the one thing that we as fans and citizens of Aztec, we do now, well, we expect more. We expect the repeats and the building upon. One championship's not enough.
No pressure.
It's called franchising. You know, we want to be able to recognize that championship for a year and then build on the ability to have another trophy. Seeing people that are excited to hold up a trophy is super cool. The excitement on second base seems kind of nice, but we want to see more wins.
He's referring to himself about liking to hold that trophy.
Yeah, I like it. I was hoping someone was going to carry it in today so I could hold it for part of the picture. So this is my look of disappointment that there's not going to be a trophy in here. And I know the girls received these medals too, because I saw a lot of pictures of them chewing on medals. Like, I think they were hungry after this game. After that celebration, they were a little hungry. So we want to recognize the team. I do want the girls that are here and the coaches to stand up.
I just want to add a little more for everyone to know. One of the two things. All of our seniors are committed and have help with college. They're all assigned to a college. All of our seniors are going to college next year to play softball as well as continue their education. We have juniors right now already talking to colleges. So, and the one other thing that I wanted everyone to know is that this team got. Everyone's aware of the hustle kindness movement, and this team got hustled the week before state by Farmington City Parks and Rec for their exemplary effort. They witnessed in that tournaments picking up trash, talking to people cordially, and they were recognized for that. And so it's about more than softball for us coaches in this program. So just wanted everyone to know.
So if we could see this team over the summer wearing medals and picking up trash around town. I mean, Rick said it. It wasn't our idea. I think that's a phenomenal idea. We will recognize you again at the end of summer for every bag of trash picked up. So for everybody that's here, I do want to do a name recognition. I've got a roster here. Just want you to stand up and then stay standing once we get the names called out. So if they're not here, we're going to appreciate them anyway. So Paige Adair, Ashlyn Bradley, Cheyenne Simpkins, Kylie Brown, Sarah Jones, Elena Saylor, Autumn Peterson, Juliana Mitchell, Trinity Pollock, Avery Adair, Jocelyn Orick, Alana Larkins, Kara Doherty, Aspen Holland, April Trujillo, and then coaches, Roy Johnson, Rick Adair, Gary Graham. I missed anybody? Sherry. Gotcha. She didn't want to sit down, so it kind of confused me. For all of you, we say congratulations. So we're going to have the whole team come up behind the commission and pose for a picture with the commission. And so what better spot than to be right here? Yeah, you got to find a spot for them. Don't need that shoe.
Congratulations. Thank you. Yes.
I have time to do my hair.
I don't know. I feel awkward sitting.
We were trying to take coaches too.
We prefer if the girls it was just about the girls.
Yeah. It sounds easy that way.
Okay. On three. 1, 2. Go Tigers.
It's got to be a good picture if it's going on our Facebook page.
1, 2, 3.
Congratulations.
Very, very nice. Job well done, ladies.
Yes, definitely.
You can stay or you can go. It's your choice. Looks like most of them made a decision pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's pretty quick. They've left you. You're by yourself.
We're just moms.
Also very important. So another recognition we have is recently we weren't able to attend, no one from the city was able to attend, but at the New Mexico Airport Managers Association, an annual manager or airport meeting, the Aztec Airport Air Show and Event of the Year 2017, the Wings and Wheels Fly-In. What an amazing thing. During the time when we were having our second annual Wings and Wheels Fly-In, the one from last year was awarded the Event of the Year. And I think that's amazing for general aviation airports throughout New Mexico. So we do have this really cool plaque. We're hoping next year to accompany this plaque with the next plaque that says Event of the Year again, 2018, and then the Airport of the Year is going to be nice when we put it right beside it with all the work that we're doing on the airport. Very exciting. I know that Troy Bible and his crew put a lot of work into this event. Last year we had over 1,000 people. That's where the award came. This year they easily eclipsed 2,000 people over a 3-day event. So if you look at just the merit of bringing together a car show and a fly-in and then the build-up for the airport, this is phenomenal. It's things like this that give us that recognition for our airport and has caused an increase in our traffic patterns at the airport. So a lot of hard work going into the Aztec Airport, and the pilots have done a good job, and Troy Bible was phenomenal in getting last year's event and this year's event in. So we're really excited and really proud to be awarded the Air Show Event of the Year. And that was with support through not only the community, but New Mexico Aviation and the FAA to be able to
Pull off the event.
to make an event like this happen, to get approvals and to have such a large group of people say we're committed to seeing something like this happen in the community. So add another event to what we do in Aztec, and it just makes us that much more special. So I do have one more recognition. Mayor, it's going to go down to the employee recognition, if you're good with that. We have with us tonight an employee that's not only amazing and great and has a wonderful personality, but that also gets the opportunity at the end of the week to retire. And we're not just talking about retire after a year, 2 years, 7.5. We're talking 27 years of service in the same city, in the same department. Sometimes you look at it and you say, maybe you could bounce around between a few departments. You don't want to deal with people there. You go somewhere else. Not as difficult to do that, but to be a dedicated person and to stay in that department and to stay serving the community nonstop. And we're not talking about an employee that chose to hide behind a desk or an office for 27 years. We're talking about someone that reads Cat in the Hat on a regular to a bunch of 3-year-olds. I mean, we're talking about someone that finds a person that doesn't like to read and says, you're going to like this book. Now, that's a bold statement, especially when that's someone that doesn't like to read as myself, and she can locate a book or can sit
Hooked
there.
on Cat in the Hat?
Well, Cat in the Hat was an easy one.
I'll wait till the Cat in the Hat comes back.
Yeah.
That's right.
And in costume makes it better.
Wait till that one comes
I'm
along.
just saying, that's some talent we're talking about. But Karen Lozier has been with the city for 27 years and has really shown what the librarian spirit's all about. You know, you look at what you think a librarian is, and we have this conversation all the time, basically now because Kate makes us talk about this all the time. But seeing a talent where you find a person and they get to that spot and that's where their strength is incredible. You know, we don't see that often in any type of industry, not whether it's in a library or in a city employment. Talented people are a struggle to find, and especially in, the last 10 years, there's that struggle to find the really, really strong individuals. For a library and for a librarian, for a community asset, such as Karen, somebody that can sit there and in a 5-minute discussion tell you what your likes are, what you're really going to enjoy, can tell you an author that you're going to enjoy, can tell you the number of fines that you have for not turning your book in on time, and not just destroy you and tell you that you're an idiot and don't ever come get a book again, but to invite you in and want to be a part of your life. it's incredible. So for those of us that have been able to work with Karen, me just for the last 7 years or so, it's an honor for us to enjoy it. In a few days, I think on the 31st, I believe the library is going to have a last day kind of event, so that I'm thinking Karen may not have to work that day. I think if you show up, you just get to talk to her for the day.
She washes dishes.
Well, maybe that's the last. Boy, what a sending out party, Kate. You're really good at that. That's going out with a bang. But
We'll have Commissioner McHugh do that.
yeah, and I think that's the beauty for that. For the last day of 27 years of work, you get to just kick your feet up and say thank you, and the community gets to say thank you to Karen. So we wanted to recognize her. We want to take up a big space on her wall, and we figure that 27 years deserves some type of plaque to remind you that this is where you spent 27 years of your life, in case you forget in a week or so. So in recognition of 27 years of dedicated service to the citizens and city of Aztec, May 16th, 1990 to May 31st, 2017, presented this 23rd day of May 2017 to Karen Lozier. When you absolutely, positively have to know, ask a librarian. And when you need to know, you can ask Karen. And that comes from American Library Association. So we want to recognize Karen. We want to let her get up and come accept our plaque.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I want to stand with her for our faces.
Ready? One, two, three.
And then we give you a microphone too, if after 27 you got anything to say. We're here for you.
I would never, ever say, you're an idiot, don't come back. Say, keep coming back all the time, and we'll get you straightened out. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Karen.
it. That's right. Mayor, it's cool for us to be able to recognize awards. It's cool for us to be able to recognize a sports team. But dedication in 27 years is a choice. It's not something you just do because you don't have anything else to do. It's a passion, and in local government, that's a blessing for us. And Karen has been an incredible blessing from the time that I've met her to the last day that she works. I can only assume that as soon as she's done with that last day, she runs as fast as she can out of the state, maybe out of the country, there's no telling, and worry that someone may call her back. But we're proud to know Karen and have Karen as a member of our Aztec family, and one of those people that we're confident you can always talk to and get an answer, and just have someone that's a compassionate, caring individual that is awesome to spend time with. So again, thank you, Karen.
Congratulations, Karen. I hope you have wonderful days ahead of you.
Yes.
Well, those will be
there you
wonderful
go.
days. Congratulations. Okay, are we ready to move on?
I have completed what I wanted to say, Mayor.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Items placed on the consent agenda will be voted on with one motion. If there are any items that a commissioner would like to discuss further, they may pull them for discussion under items from the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
I'd move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this evening's consent agenda as listed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, being no items from the consent agenda, we'll move into citizens' input. If there's anyone here this evening who would like to address the commission about any item not on this evening's agenda, you may have up to 3 minutes to do so. We need you to sign up at the clerk's table. No? Okay. Okay, then we'll move into business items. Business item A, purchase power contract amendment number 3. Mr. Ray.
Okay, what change did you make beforehand? Which item
We
we're moving
moved
forward?
the utility rate discussion, item C, to
Great.
after the land use hearing.
Okay, just making sure I wasn't off, Mayor. Thank you. This item is the Guzman Energy prepayment proposal. This is an amendment number 3 to the current existing agreement that we have, which is the power purchase agreement with Guzman Energy. The proposal it would call for a prepayment of $2 million by the city to basically back to Guzman Energy through a lender for their solar field project. In return, the city would receive a lower power purchase cost. The rate for the city contract would go from $49.50 per megawatt hour to $44.42 per megawatt hour, and the city would also be allowed to participate in its full Western Area Power allocation, or the replacement power, WRP allocation. We have presented commission in a workshop with a list of scenarios, and we've looked at those scenarios to see that the worst possible scenario, the best possible scenario, as presented to commission, we would say that the worst and the best are the outliers and really not a feasible option for where we're at. The scenario number 2 and scenario number 3 are closer to what city staff would project as the potential benefits over the 6-year period of this contract that the city could receive. As mentioned earlier in our workshop, if commission chooses to move forward with this amendment number 3, this allocation would be dedicated to the joint utility fund over the course of the 6 years that the agreement would be in place.
Other questions from commission? Okay. If there are no questions, then I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve amendment number 3 to the power sales agreement between Guzman Energy LLC and the city of Aztec.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do you need a roll call for this, Carla? Let's go ahead, since it is a large purchase.
Mayor Burbidge,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sly,
Aye.
Commissioner Redondo,
Aye.
Commissioner McClure,
Aye.
Okay,
motion passes 4-0.
thank you. Business item B, approval of preliminary fiscal year 2018 budget. Mr. Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. The preliminary budget has been presented to the commission. I believe it was presented on May 9th. A workshop was held on May 17th, and then we held an additional workshop this evening before the commission meeting to review the preliminary numbers for FY 2018. We do have the caveat that with the New Mexico State Legislature going back into a special session, that our budget could be altered by actions taken by the legislature. For example, if the state decides to bring back the tax on food or medical, that could directly impact our budget allocation. Therefore, that would be allocated in our final budget adoption if any action is taken. If an action were taken after our final budget adoption, we would make an amendment to our overall budget for the year showing any changes that the state would make. And the changes the state could approve go from potential positive or negative. So anything that the state does at this point, then we will have to take action moving forward. The total budget for FY18 is proposed at $28,433,369. That includes North Main, the first phase of North Main. It also includes the arterial project, the general fund at $6.8 million, joint utility fund at $13.5 million. The preliminary budget, if approved by commission, will then be submitted to the Finance and Administration Local Government Division with the state of New Mexico. They will give a preliminary approval with any type of changes or comments. They will send that back to commission, and then commission would approve a final budget, preferably before July 31st of 2017.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Ray on the budget?
No, ma'am.
No?
Mayor, in your recommended motion, we just have the approval of the budget. If we move forward with this budget, then we would need to include the
Plan of work?
plan of work approval, and we would also need to define the allocation for the community support allocation. We did have 3 requests for community support, one from the Ruins, one from the Boys and Girls Club, and one from the Aztec Museum.
And I'll just throw out there, I know, obviously, those entities asking for funding are anxious to hear so. We're looking at final budget adoption by when?
We have to by July 31st.
By July 31st.
Whatever.
Right, I'll just throw this out there. Seeing as it's that, the total amount in those special community support requests really won't impact one way or the other, but I just was thinking maybe we hold off on that till final budget approval for those pieces. Let's get through special legislative session and see what happens before we make that final decision. That would just be my thoughts on that. So, I mean, it's not going to offset if the legislature decides to do something horrible, but anyway, so that's just my recommendation. Any other questions or discussion?
No, ma'am?
Okay. Is there someone who'd like to make a motion?
We need to include the.
Yeah.
And
And I
work
can,
in the-
right.
in
I'll go
the-
ahead and, so I would like to, hang on, let me find the exact wording here, right? I would like to make a motion to approve the submittal of the fiscal year 2018 preliminary operating budget to New Mexico Department of Finance and Local Government Division. And along with that will be approval of the plan of work for the year, which is included in the budget numbers. And then I would like to, well, I'll just leave it at that. Plan of
That'll work.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Do you want a roll call for this one? Okay, please. Aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Okay, then with our amendment to the agenda this evening, then that moves us to the land use hearing. Okay. I do have a lengthy script to read through, so everyone please bear with me. And I will endeavor to pronounce everything correctly. Do we have the sign-in sheet? Okay. And the following hearing procedure is for all hearings on tonight's agenda. A land use hearing registration form is located on the clerk's table for those who wish to receive a copy of the results from this hearing. You must provide your full name and current mailing address in order to receive a copy of the land use hearing order. If you wish to testify and provide comment on the matter at issue, you must register with the clerk on the land use hearing registration form and be sworn in with staff, the applicant, identified parties, witnesses, and interested persons. The meeting tonight will be conducted under procedures mandated by the New Mexico Court of Appeals in Battershell versus the City of Albuquerque, which are intended to protect the due process rights of all parties. Under this ruling, the following procedures will apply. Parties to the meeting will be identified, as will any witnesses the parties may wish to give testimony, as well as any interested persons wishing to testify and provide comment. City staff has a responsibility to assist the commission in fully developing the meeting record and may testify. All persons offering testimony will be sworn in by the clerk, will be sworn in by myself, who is authorized to administer oaths. All persons offering testimony will be subject to cross-examination by commission, city staff, and the parties to the hearing. Testimony will be limited to the relevant matter being heard. Other persons may be designated by the commission as parties if they can show to the satisfaction of the commission that they have an immediate, pecuniary, or direct interest in the outcome of the meeting. Witnesses are those persons designated by parties to present testimony on their behalf. Interested persons are those persons interested in the case but not identified as either a party by commission or a witness by any party. Aside from the applicants and city staff, are there any persons who wish to be identified as the party to these items? Okay, seeing none. Okay. Okay, so at this time, we have, is it John Fifield? Okay, and you're an interested person, correct? Correct. Okay, we have Steve Hernandez. Okay, and you're something agent, development agent? Yes. Okay, and so I'm assuming you're here with Mr. Blue as part of the party, the applicant? Yes. Okay, and so Mr. Blue as the applicant, and then John Armenta? Okay, as an interested person. Okay. Okay, do the commission agree to accept these individuals? We have Mr. Steve Hernandez and Mr. Sam Blue here as the applicants. And then we have Mr. John Fifield and John Armenta here as interested persons.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
commission accepts?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, as we move into the land use hearing part of the meeting, is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the City of Aztec Commissioners to hear any of the hearings on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal biases to be declared by a commission member?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. Have there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matters that a commission member needs to declare?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, at this time, will staff, the applicants, parties identified commission, all witnesses, and any interested persons wishing to testify regarding a zone change from A1 agricultural or rural district to M1 light manufacturing district, please stand and raise your right hand. Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please be seated. Okay, testimony and evidence must be directed toward the zone change from A1 agricultural or rural district to M1 light manufacturing district, and any applicable federal, state, or municipal laws or regulations or criteria which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford us and other interested persons an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal on that issue. Any party as identified by the Commission may request a continuance of this hearing if able to provide documentation or evidence in support or opposition of the application, in addition to what was available at the time that notice of this hearing was provided. In the conduct of land use hearings, unless there is a continuance, if a participant so requests before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, the record shall remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing. Okay, I will briefly go over the order of presentation on the screen to your left. First, staff will summarize the staff report to the extent necessary to enable those present to understand the issues before the commissioners. The commission members may ask questions of staff, and they may be cross-examined by the applicant and parties. Next, the applicant will have up to 15 minutes to address the commission. Commission members may ask questions of the applicant, and they may be cross-examined by staff. Okay, we do not have parties this evening, but we do have interested persons, and so interested persons may have up to 5 minutes each to address the commission, and then they may be asked questions of the commission, and they may be cross-examined by staff and the applicant. Okay? Okay, at that point, the hearing will then be closed to all testimony. The commission may discuss the issue amongst themselves. The commission will then make a decision and issue findings of fact and conclusions of law, move into closed session pursuant to New Mexico Statute 10.15.1.H-1, the Open Meetings Act exception, continue the public hearing until a specified time, or take the matter under advisement and announce their recommendation at a specified time. Okay, so at this time we will begin with the order of presentations, and we will begin with staff. Mr. Saavedra?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Commission. Land Use Hearing 2017-047 is a request from Sam Blue for a zone change from the A1 Agricultural or Rural District to the M1 Light Manufacturing District. The applicant requested this zone change in part because the current zoning A1 doesn't allow for the proposed use of an educational institution. The petitioner has indicated the future home of Mosaic Academy will be at this site, as seen on the aerial photo. The acreage in total is 7.1 acres, and the requested zone from M1 to the light manufacturing district allows for such use, allows for educational institution. As seen here, this is the current zoning district, A1. It's currently surrounded by C2 to the north, M1 to the east, R1 to the west, and A1 to the south. This zone change request would not be a spot zone. to give you an idea of what it looks like today. Now, about a month and a half ago, we received this, a alternate summary plat from the petitioner and Basin Surveying. Essentially, they're requesting a lot split. Community Development reviewed and approved this plat. As you can see, the plat splits the two parcels, one 4 acres, 4.10 acres, and one 2.7 acres. Now, the petitioner could have requested a conditional use permit for educational institution on the lot at 7 acres. However, because the lot is being reduced to 4 acres, the conditional use permit in the A1 district does not apply, and therefore a zone change had to be requested to allow such use. Now, the future home of Mosaic Academy will be on this lot right here, the 4+ acre lot. So essentially, the plat will split the lot as such. To go back to the lot, access will be taken right here on Pepsi, and then intersect with Pepsi Way to 550. Now, we let the petitioner know that they still needed to be in contact with the New Mexico Department of Transportation to ensure they take no issue with it and no access permit is required by NMDOT. Now, this is to give you an idea of what it looks like from the north. As you can see, Microtel. This is more to the northwest. To the south. As you can see, further back, there's residential units. To the east, this is where the M1 zoning district currently exists. And to the west, where it's the actually R1 residential single-family zoning district. Now, when the petitioner came into our office and indicated his request for a zone change to M1, initially I was reluctant. When you go from A1 to light manufacturing, there's some potential uses that could be detrimental to the surrounding area, especially to the surrounding residential units to the south and to the proposed school. M1 allows for conditional uses such as a rendering plant or manufacturing of chemicals, paints, and so forth. Those, in my opinion, would not be a good use for the area if you have residential or if you have a school. Talking to the petitioner, I had recommended a C1 or a C2, but nevertheless, an M1 was the direction the petitioner chose. After further talking to the petitioner, I wanted to get an understanding why M1 was the designated or the requested zoning district. He indicated that light manufacturing, such as building toys, for example, or having something like a maker space, would allow manufacturing, whereas C2 or C1 would be more limited. So considering it's light manufacturing, and considering that if we would not have a rendering plant or manufacturing of chemicals that can produce negative externalities, I felt with certain conditions that this zoning request was appropriate if we make sure that conditional uses in the future, such as those mentioned, would not be allowed. And with that, I will stand for questions.
So just for point of clarification, Stephen, this is for both parcels,
This is
correct?
for both parcels. So in total, that,
It's the full 7.10 acres.
yes, yes, Mayor. Right there. So all the other parcels not highlighted, agricultural to the south, residential to the west, those would all remain the same. And further consideration, when you look at the aerial, you'll see Aztec Well right here, so this is manufacturing. You have the hotel, you have FedEx, you have Pepsi Way. This is residential, it's undeveloped and vacant. And of course, right here, this is where you have your residential units. And this is where the concern was with this zoning district. It was residential here, and then a school here. Now, the school will act as a buffer.
Right.
So that was positive. Again, though, if we have a rendering plant or they're making chemicals in this area and you got a school there, that's not going to necessarily be a
Right.
good thing.
Right. Okay. And you've still not heard from any surroundings since the
So-
agenda was put together?
Right. So property owners were sent out letters on May 1st. We did not receive any comments or concerns, but to my understanding, there is a few individuals that are at the meeting today.
Okay. Any other- Yes.
So this conditional where, no rendering, no slaughterhouses, bummer. And stuff, is it just for this parcel, or are you doing that for all M1 in the city of Aztec?
No, just for
No,
this
just for
parcel.
this parcel.
This
All right.
parcel.
Was that your next big business idea?
I'm thinking.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the commission
No, ma'am.
for Mr. Saavedra?
Not right now.
No? Okay. All right, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, at this time then, applicant, you guys do have a chance to cross-examine Mr. Saavedra. If you need just to clarify anything that he said, you do have that opportunity. If not, you do have up to 15 minutes each to address the commission.
I guess I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
I realized that he had to point out the worst case stuff that could go there, such as a asphalt plant, a chemical, or paint place. Asphalt place would take 10 to 15 acres. It's a massive facility. There'll only be 2.7 acres. And paint and chemical manufacturing typically is 20 acres plus. I can just vouch to say I don't want a slaughterhouse, so that one you'll have to take my word on. We had on and off over the years spoke to high-tech industry that does research and manufacturing before it goes to like large places like Intel, and they do it in a sterile environment, maybe 1,000 square feet, but it's technically manufacturing, and so they need, I forgot the name, but a pristine, clean work area, so it'd actually be almost the opposite of what you're talking about. And I thought I might reach out to these firms and see, just with having, so it's one thing off the list that, instead of telling them we would try, just having it available. And our property taxes are going to skyrocket, we're aware of that, but we're willing to make the investment to have it available. So I think the presentation was fair, and it's his job to point out some of the worst case stuff, but the acreage doesn't allow that, even if I wanted to. So I have nothing else unless you have a question of me.
Other questions for Mr. Blue?
No, ma'am.
No?
Okay, thank you.
Sam, or Stephen, any cross-examination? No. Okay. Mr. Hernandez? You also have up to 15 minutes.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come up, Madam Mayor, Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to be involved in what could be a very, very stellar project for the Aztec community. The Mosaic Academy, I don't know whether you're aware of the campus that they have now. Well, we propose a 20,000 square foot contiguous building with a wonderful parking lot and some activity fields as well. Okay, and can I borrow your pointer? Oops. This one here? Thank you, thank you. So the school will be nestled up into this corner here. All right, with the drive down here, and the drive here has adequate room for stacking of vehicles and/or microbuses. They don't have any large buses as part of their system. All right. The finishes on the building are going to be some nice colors, a stucco with some feature stripping in the ephes So it's really going to be a very attractive building. We obviously have to keep within budget, but this site sets up very well for the school, very well for our budget. Sam has also given us some commitments as to what he's going to put in the front there. Okay, we don't want to see anything that's negative to the children as well. Okay, I won't go there. Okay, but
I'm picturing it.
Okay, well, we have had discussions, and he's given us the commitment that won't happen there. All right, so we feel comfortable in that respect. And I have had some dialogue with the NMDOT, all right, as to the traffic analysis. We've done a generation study, all right, of just telling how many vehicles come in and out during peak times, all right, and the staggering of that. The school has grades up to 6th, I'm sorry, up to 8th grade. There's three different categories. It's a K to 2nd, a 3 to 5, and then a 6 to 8. All right, so it really sets up nicely for a traffic pattern, a staggered traffic pattern. All right, and once again, this is going to be a facility that sits up here virtually on this pinnacle that people are going to be able to see for quite a distance, that has great picture windows looking off onto the northern mountains, and it's just going to be a wonderful facility. I'm very proud to be able to be the engineer designing it. So I stand for questions.
Questions?
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
On the buses, are they going to, the Aztec schools are not going to provide the buses?
No, this is all.
This is all through Mosaic?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I was just wondering about where the microbuses were going to come from.
Well, once again, I can't speak
No,
to
I know, but
what-
I'm just saying, that's why was my
Well,
concern.
what we do as part of our traffic generation study, okay, not a full traffic impact analysis, but a traffic gen, all right, a generation of what could happen there with this size of school, with these size of people, and what is the proposed amount of students that could be there on, let's say it takes off and we add more buildings and so on and so forth. So we try to look at that,
Okay.
all right, and within reason, we try to look at what would be the stacking of vehicles coming in and out of there, and how does that correspond with the trucks coming from the bottling company or FedEx and just the traffic scenario there. Okay. Well, what helps us in that respect is the microtel across the street. Okay. That also gives a buffer, if you will, in personality to this area. All right, and we like that. Okay, we like that kind of insulates us even from that manufacturing back there. All right, and you've got a great restaurant pad in front of the hotel. All right, so I believe Sam's going to land someone on this front that'll also aid in a building presentation that complements ours. All right, he's made elevation changes so that we still stand tall up and above beyond the roof line of that proposed structure.
I was just, as a former bus driver, I was wondering about the maneuverability of the buses getting in and out of there, so.
Well, we've got a wonderful traffic circle,
Okay,
designed.
cool. Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Hernandez?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am?
No? Okay.
I'd have one more statement.
Okay.
That already working with Mr. Saavedra and your city has just been really delightful, and I thank you for allowing it to be developer-friendly, because, we love coming to places like this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay.
We still have 15 minutes to take a stab in regards to the buses or
Oh,
something.
yeah, you didn't use your time and, If you'd like to address it, go ahead, Sam.
So, can you put the picture back up?
I'm sorry.
Which picture?
Whoop, this will go this way. Oh, okay, I got you. I got you. So, Commissioner Sight, what we are looking at, so when I say it's not a surprise, I have a few times been questioned on this being a little bit of a staggered intersection, which is not ideal. And so we have been on and off, oops, excuse me. I wonder why it doesn't like me. So, we have on and off been working with an adjacent landowner, so in an ideal world, this turning radius would then align with this driveway, because it's been pointed out some grave issues with this staggered intersection, but I guess anything added to it will be better, so anyways, I just didn't want that to go over the radar without mentioning it, so
Thank you.
that's about it.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
No further questions?
No, ma'am.
No. Cross-examination, Stephen? No? Okay. Okay. So then, at this time, then we will move into interested persons, and you do each have up to 5 minutes to address the commission. We do need you to come up to the podium, and we'll start with Mr. Fifield. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay.
Good evening. Again, my name is John Fifield. I have a brief statement I just want to read. That's okay. Again, my name is John Fifield, and my family owns the property that is located directly west of the property that Sam is developing. Because there is a natural slope down from Sam's property to our property, we are concerned that the runoff from Sam's developed property onto our property will adversely affect our undeveloped property, especially if there are businesses that use lots of water in their manufacturing process. So it's our request that all water collected on Sam's property after it's been developed, including rainwater, will be directed away from our property, not cause any damage.
Okay. Just a quick clarification. In the image, do you own property below what's shown there?
No, on the left.
You are
west
to
of
the,
it.
okay, and you're saying that Sam's property is higher elevation
It is
than yours?
higher.
Okay,
It's a natural slope down.
okay.
Doesn't really show up on that.
Yeah, it kind of shows the opposite on the picture, so thank you for that clarification.
If you see next one, that one, it goes
Okay,
down.
okay. And so your concern is about both drainage water and then any processed water that's used?
Well, when I saw the light manufacturing, I thought of all kinds of things, all
Okay.
kinds of businesses that would use lots of water.
Okay.
So we're concerned that if it's not properly channeled, it could come right down into our property, which is undeveloped.
Okay,
And then also we would include the rainwater and anything else that's
Okay.
collected in there.
okay. So I'm just going to do a few points of clarification and asking questions, okay? So bear with me.
Okay.
So Stephen, in that situation, first of all, rainwater would be taken care of in the drainage plan for the development itself, correct? That's correct. Okay, so they would have to show that diversion, that it's not causing issues for neighbors. And then any water that's used in any manufacturing process should be disposed through the wastewater system. Right. And so those things should be in place. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but it's
It
at
does.
least, okay. Are there anything else you'd like to address?
No, that's all.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Feifel? Okay. Cross-examinations, gentlemen? Sam, Mr. Hernandez?
I would add, as a civil engineer,
Okay.
okay, we absolutely would never discharge any water.
I don't think we'd allow you to,
Cross-
so.
It's against the law.
Right,
There's
right.
statute in place, all right? So, thank you for being aware
Right.
of that. And then his property is significantly lower. I mean, it's.
Gotcha, okay.
I mean, it's significantly lower. So, as part of our drainage structures, pond that.
Mhm.
No, we will definitely be using our site for that.
Okay.
I mean, it's large enough to lend to that.
Okay.
Actually as landscape features. All right.
Okay, so retention ponds or things of that nature.
Yeah, and then I can also state with any other proposed manufacturing, they can't discharge
Right.
indiscriminately either, especially any wastewater.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feifold.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next we have Mr. Armenta.
Good evening. My name is John Armenta. I'm the electrical engineering manager for the Farmington Electric Utility System. Mayor, city manager, commissioner, thanks for receiving me this evening. I'm here. I do not have a specific objection, nor do I have a specific approval for the zone change. I have concerns that are centered squarely on the interests of the city of Farmington, specifically the electric enterprise. The property immediately to the south of Mr. Blue's property is the Farmington-owned Aztec substation. We've had a substation operation there since 1958, and it has recently, in the last year and a half, been upgraded, actually been replaced. We have a brand new substation there. The old substation is being demolished and will actually be completed. The demolishment will be completed at the end of this month. And we will then move into phase 2 of the project, which rounds out to what we call a ring bus, and will finish up the property. This substation will be an integral part. Ultimately, will play an integral part to the electric service to the city of Aztec. Sometime in the future, given some of the plans that Mr. Ken George, the utility director here, and I have been discussing over the last several years. We have some really grand plans, and anyway, again, I have some concerns about that about the zone change. First concern was if that zone change goes through, will that adjoining property be affected by taxes? And if so, I'd like to know how much, and if I can have that information available and take it to my management team, they would be most appreciative. I'm concerned about physical impacts that this may have. The property, as you can see there's a bank. We're actually quite a bit higher than, our land is quite a bit higher than Mr. Blue's land. And in fact, right at the property line, there is a significant change in elevation as high as 8, even 9 feet in some places. So I'm concerned that if some efforts are not taken to prevent, we could wind up with land sloughing off and so forth. We have had to build the fence right up to the property line with 5 feet within the property line, and we actually have a ground wire 2 feet inside the property line as required by electrical code when developing a substation. And if land starts to slough off, some of that could be the integrity could be compromised. The fence, the ground wire, and so forth. So I have those kinds of concerns. I'm concerned about future impacts. If we're going to put a school next to a substation, one of the reasons I'm here is to put on the record that we have been here since 1958. So I would really like not to hear complaints from the school system in 10 years saying, hey, we have magnetic fields, or these, the substation looks ugly, we don't like it. Well, we were here first for a long, long time. So that's my other concern is if you put a school right next to it, maybe we'll be hearing some of those complaints in the future. But again, I want to be on record to point out just exactly what I said there. Other than that, I think, well, I have worked with Mr. Blue here with the 2 properties there, and I think we've gotten along pretty well, and I don't see any other issues going forward as a result of this zone change.
Okay.
Any questions?
Stephen, do you want to address some of these? I will defer to Stephen first.
So some of the questions I won't be able to answer probably adequately to Mr. Armenta's liking, but let me start off with the taxes. Again, this zone change is just for this parcel. It's not for the parcel that City of Farmington owns. So your property will not be affected in that regards. Second, future impacts are obviously a concern. Anytime there's development, there is that risk. We would hope, working with a developer, that they would take that consideration and develop in a way that they're not going to harm neighboring properties. That goes with any development, being it residential, being it industrial, commercial. That's always a concern. Obviously, that's something they will have to work with, showing their plans. I don't imagine they're going to start encroaching on your property, or at least some of those electrical lines. That said, they have the right to develop their property as fit. Of course, future impacts, definitely a concern. We want to make sure that when it comes to rainwater and so forth, that those mechanisms are in place. So again, there's no runoff, and the soil doesn't start to denigrate in your area. So those are unfortunately the best I could give you trying to go forward with any type of development. Now, as far as the school complaining, unfortunately, I can't say one way or another if that's going to happen. I will say, though, the subject property right now, so what the utility station is actually in an Ag 1 zoning district, so it's considered a legal non-conforming use right now. And so it's okay. Now, will someone complain about it in the future?
Who knows?
Perhaps.
Right.
But essentially, it's more or less grandfathered in. And so as long as there's not significant changes or the footprint of the structure is expanded, there should be nothing that you had to worry about in that regards in terms of people complaining. Again, I'm sorry and I apologize. I can't prevent anyone from complaining in the future, but you are right. You were there first. So.
I wanted to just go on record to say, hey, look, we were
Right.
here first. I wanted to
Right.
be here.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Are there questions from commission for Mr. Armenta?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there
can we-
noise related to the substation?
The only
Or
noise-
it's just the magnetic, we could wear aluminum foil and ward that off,
Well,
but,
that's good, good.
but
Highly recommend it. No, don't put that.
if
on.
it was like a noise type thing, any kind of like compressor sounds or stuff like that?
The noises that come from the substation are typically the buzzing, the humming from the transformer. That's caused by well, I won't get into a technical piece of it. The noise is a concern on the transformer, and it is, as a matter of fact, addressed in the specification, and we call for a well-known decibel level that such that you're a certain distance away from it, you really can't hear it. Further, we've actually placed this transformer in an optimum location away from residences and have put up a privacy fence instead of just a regular chain link fence, and that privacy slats and so forth obstruct the noise somewhat. I've actually, it's in operation now. I've actually been there, and I find it hard to listen, to hear it until you get right up to it, and I have to actually get inside the station in order to hear it.
Okay.
The other noises that you could hear are occasional banging. Sometimes people might even consider it and might even call it an explosion. That's kind of what it sounds like when the breaker operates under fault conditions. Those are very rare events, and in fact, the big breaker, we like for that not to never happen, because if it does, then we have people without power. I think the last time, and Mr. George might vouch for me here, we had put up some equipment that did actually explode in here just a few months ago. Once in November, and then a couple weeks hence in December, while we were building the substation. It was some faulty equipment that we energized, and it did cause an explosion. That's the only time that we've actually had an errant outage to the city of Aztec since the year 2000 or before. That's when I started working here, was in 2000. So,
Thank you.
anything else?
No, thank you. So cross-examination, clarification, I have some questions for you, Mr. Hernandez, but is there any cross-examination for clarification on anything Mr. Armenta said?
Yes.
Okay.
First off, we do understand that hill needs to be stabilized.
Okay.
Right? And we will do that, and I've been discussing that with Sam as well.
Okay.
In some participation on his part. But nonetheless, whether he does or doesn't, we understand that needs to be stabilized. The stabilization works on both your property as well as ours. So don't have proper swells and runoff patterns, then we can save what's all day long.
Sure.
Because it doesn't do us a bit of good to have that slope come down onto our facility. So it's definitely part of our plan to stabilize that.
Sure, we'll work with you on how we can make sure that we come to a neutral agreement.
Okay, I appreciate that. No, and you're our neighbors, so we look forward to helping, working together and addressing whatever may come up, even if it's 10 years from now.
Even 10 years from now.
You know what?
I'll tell my successor.
This kids will be here for that long, guaranteed.
Right.
If we don't perform a facility that has longevity and
Right.
sustainability, then we've not done our jobs. Okay. I'd ask you now also,
Sure.
the science behind the magnetic field. Can you expound on that a little bit for us?
Gentlemen, can I get you to come up to the mic so that we make sure we capture every detail?
Not that I'm a complaint.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Okay, I'm going to really open myself up here. I apologize. One of the first assignments I had in my fledgling career was to work with two people who were experts in the field of magnetic fields. Their names was Dr. Nancy Wertheimer and Ed Leeper, where they did a study in the city of Boulder, Colorado in 1976, and they tried to compare what they call thick wire to incidence of childhood leukemia. And the idea was that the thick wire had more current in it, and so there was more magnetic fields. And they noticed that there was a 2-to-1. It was an epidemiological study showing that children were twice as likely to get childhood leukemia if they were near thick wire. I understand some years later somebody did an equivalent study doing traffic, and it was 3 times as likely for children to have leukemia, to contract leukemia, if they live near heavy traffic. So epidemiological studies, they don't show much other than coincidence. That was kind of the beginning of magnetic field, concerns of magnetic fields and so forth. And every now and then it pops up. People start to be concerned that maybe magnetic fields cause cancer. There's no evidence showing one way or the other cause and effect of magnetic fields to cancer. And I need to specify low magnetic fields, ELF, extra low frequency magnetic fields, specifically in the 60 hertz range, which is where electricity is served. The magnetic fields are a fundamental force of nature, much like gravity fields or nuclear bondings, for instance. And they are on the spectrum of the electromagnetic fields, and if you get the frequency high enough, you can obtain ionizing radiation, namely in the X-rays and gamma rays and so forth. It's on that same spectrum, it's just in the extremely low frequency range. And that's where the concern, people say, well, gee, if you have these kind of magnetic fields going on, then they must cause something. And there's no evidence pointing to it one way or the other. Magnetic fields are particularly important in the operation of AC, that is alternating current devices, specifically for motors and especially for transformers. It's because of magnetic fields that we have the ability to transform high voltage to low voltage and low voltage to high voltage. If we just ran things at zero frequency, that is to say at a DC, we would not have that capability. We'd have to have a substation on every block to serve people the power that they need. But because of the magnetic fields and how they operate as they oscillate, we're able to transform voltage from low to high, send it long distances, transform it back down, and then transform it again. We've got transformers all over, transforming power from the distribution voltage down to house voltage, and then your wall packs down to the voltages that you use to charge your phones and operate your devices and so forth. The measurements, you can measure magnetic fields in a unit that's called microteslas, sometimes called milligauss. They don't really know what a high reading is or what a low reading is. I will tell you that around transmission lines, you can get anywhere from 4 milligauss up to 400 milligauss. You can get from distribution lines, you can get right about the same, and that's, you're standing right under them. What I tell people is if they're really concerned about magnetic fields, they need to practice some risk management. In particular, if you're really concerned about magnetic fields and how bad that transformer looks out there in your backyard, make sure you don't have an electric clock sitting next to your head all night long. Because it's all about distance. If you can have a small amount of magnetic field right next to you all the time, you will certainly have more. You'll certainly have more magnetic fields than if you are looking at a substation all day long from across the street. So there it's a matter of risk and so forth. I have to tell one of my favorite stories to tell is while I was in Denver again in my fledgling career. They had the Action 7 News, the Tattletale lady, whatever she was doing. She was trying to make a point to how bad magnetic fields were. She took these these fluorescent lights, and she stood under the transmission line at night and held them up. Well, any fourth grader knows that you've got the magnetic fields in there, and it causes the gas, it excites the gas in there in the tubes, which makes it light up. And so it looked like she was, scary and everything. And then they interviewed a lady and they showed the nasty-looking transmission structure out there in the middle of a park, and this lady was being interviewed, and she says, "These magnetic fields are killing me and my kids." So again, it's a matter of risk management. I'm not sure what else I can tell you about magnetic fields. What would you like to know?
Well, I want to take 2 light bulbs out there.
I know, I'm thinking science
And
experiments.
I would concur, because we've also done some research on it. And there's a lot of stuff out there that talks about it. But by and large, as you said, there's no real evidence showing anything. All right, there's no real binary cause attributed to that. There's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of voice. Take your pick. It really is, and thank you. All right, I appreciate that.
So, a question for Mr. Hernandez? So, I'm going to jump around here. So, I'm assuming, obviously, that you've had these same conversations with the folks from Mosaic Academy then?
And they've brought it up,
Okay.
and we've talked, and we've tried to, can I trade cards with you, please? So yes.
Okay.
And they're,
They're not experts in electromagnetic fields, I get that.
none of us are,
Right.
really.
Except-
And, but everybody that has a concern should talk about it, should ask about it,
Right.
and get informed. All right,
Okay.
and so I appreciate the information that we got tonight in this public forum. All right, and I concur with that information, and that's, again, what we've relayed back to them.
Okay.
As well as stuff that we've gotten from you all, websites and different things that concur with what he said.
Okay,
So thank you.
thank you. Okay. Okay. I know. I'm assuming no commissioners have any further questions for Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Armenta.
No, but I'm going out there with those light bulbs.
That's funny. Okay, and I'm assuming no further cross-examination? Okay. Are there any other questions from commission of anyone?
No, ma'am.
Okay, no? Okay, then at this point, we will close the hearing to testimony. Is there further discussion from the commissioner?
I don't have
No, ma'am.
anything, Madam Mayor.
Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the application, I think I'm reading the right thing here, 2017 through 047, a request from Sam Blue for a zone change from the A1 Agricultural or Rural District to M1 Light Manufacturing District, including the following restrictions. Do I have to read those?
I'm not sure where they are. Hang on. Where are you? Okay, sorry.
question, Linda.
Yeah, hang on. Stephen writes such thorough staff summaries that they're,
There's no end.
yeah, there's
We
no
didn't
end to
have
them.
the approval thing. That was the closest I got.
Okay.
Mayor, if you want to
Yes.
include the restrictions, you need to include those in the motion.
Where are you finding the restrictions?
Right under,
Staff recommendation?
That'd be on page 146 of your agenda.
4 to 6. So it's under staff recommendation, and then under that is,
Okay, the 4 restrictions. I would
Okay.
think that needs to be in there. That needs to be part of the motion.
all right.
So forgive me, before you get to that point, I guess this falls under discussion. I guess the other question that I have, because it's not outlined in our documentation and information that was brought up during testimony, is the issue about some type of retaining wall or system between the properties. And so that's another option that the commission could put in there, that the parties need to work out what that is.
Doesn't that come when they actually start doing the building, as opposed to just changing the zone?
Okay, okay, thank you, okay. All right,
All right, so adding 2 with the following restrictions. Number 1, rendering plants and slaughterhouses, sadly, are prohibited. Number 2, special manufacturing of paints, asphalt, and other similar activities are prohibited. Number 3, the dumpsters and solid waste receptacles need to be enclosed and not in view of residential properties. And number 4, adhere to lighting practices and systems to minimize light pollution.
do you have a clear motion, Carla? You're comfortable, okay. All right, so is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Late.
Mayor, we did not include accepting the findings of facts in the motion.
Oh,
Including, I wasn't done. Findings of facts, number 1 through 6.
That is sufficient.
Okay,
I'll second it again.
okay. Okay, is there anything else we've left out? Just before we take the vote. Okay, hearing none. And Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Burbidge?
Aye.
Commissioner Randall?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sight?
Aye.
Commissioner McClure?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, everyone who came, thank you very much for your time this evening. Okay, then that brings us back to business item C, the utility rate discussion. Do you have anything to kick us off with?
I do,
Mr. Ray?
Mayor, and I just want to start out and say that I concur with Mr. Armenta. I agree with what he said, just to make sure that's clear.
All of it?
Everything he said.
Okay.
I agree in my
Okay.
research as well.
So long as we're clear on that.
Going to make sure we got that out.
All right.
In the open. So, Mayor, this discussion is part of our utility cost of service study that we've contracted with Raftellus. We have gathered the information working with Raftellus, and we've also worked through some changes at the staff level based on capital projects to include our electric utility, our wastewater utility, and our water utility. After our last workshop, we were asked to review some of the projects. We did make the changes that were recommended by commission. We did move out projects to a period of 3 years on the water plant dredging, and then in turn, we moved out plant number 2, that's water plant number 1 I'm referring to, we did, or reservoir. We did move out the reservoir number 2 dredging as well. In conversations with Mr. Watson, potentially the number 2 could be moved out even further out in terms of potentially 6 or 7 years because the distance in between the two. The process now, for clarification, one of the questions was asked, right now we're lowering the water level in reservoir number 1. In order to allow that to dry, that project could in itself still be out a 2 to 3 year period before we even begin to let the project, for the drying beds to be able to dry the material. I guess that's the easiest way to say.
Can't muck out Jello?
We could, in the fear of, as we
Right,
stated
more
before,
damage, right.
damaging the infrastructure of reservoir number 1. So we have moved those items out. We did remove a couple other capital items that were discussed in the workshop. So where we're at now, the reason we wanted to put this back on for discussion is so that commission could look at potential rate structures that would allow for both the operational expenses to be covered by the revenue stream and then to provide for long-term capital outlay that could be for each utility. As predicted or as projected first by Raftellus, the first proposal has included a reduction in the electric utility rate for almost all users. The water rate increase is proposed at a 10% or 10.5% over a period of 3, 4, 5 years. And then the sewer rate, the last increases that we looked at were 2 consecutive 40% increases on a sewer rate. Part of the analysis that I sent out to commission showed that, and this is similar to what city staff had projected when we talked about the sewer outfall line, that just to cover expenses on our wastewater operation side, the increase per month per utility customer, if it was across the board, would be roughly $6.50 per month. Once we throw in the sewer outfall line, we had projected a approximately $9 increase per month to cover that $4.5 million project. If you look at those totals together, I think looking at our numbers and looking at Raftellis's numbers, we projected roughly $16.50 to cover that per month per customer. That's a base rate increase that we emailed out to commission to cover both the operational side and the capital outlay side of wastewater treatment here in the city. We did hand out a couple scenarios this evening, and we do have the model available that we're going to be able to work with some. What we're trying to get to with the commission is percentage or increases that we would select that would create healthy revenues either for joint utility as a whole or for each individual fund. Part of the discussion that Commissioner McClure brought up this evening is if we have the joint utility healthy and to cover this period of time, which would be the next 5 to 10 years, then does that allow us the flexibility to not raise rates on each individual utility in as a drastic manner as some of the proposals? So what we've got in these presentations is scenarios that show the impact of each increase and then what that'll do to the joint utility fund. We only presented 4 scenarios this evening in a printed document, and then I think Ed has that for the screen as well. We presented that as options for discussion so that commission could potentially see some pre-prepared scenarios, and then if you had some questions, we can try and input that information into that document so that we can see what is that impact over time. So we will have the model. Kathy's pulling that up now with Ed. We'll have that. I'm going to say the model, please.
Okay, we have a request from the audience. Can we turn down the air conditioning?
Yes, ma'am. Let me get that.
Or turn it up, you mean?
No. So for commission, there's 2 scenarios that we presented in the documents tonight that included the Raftellus the Guzman prepayment. So we'll start with one of those. Is there a preference as to which one we start with, or?
Since we don't know what they are, it's hard to give you a preference. Do you know what I mean?
So scenario number 1 includes the prepayment with 100% WRP, which we just approved, and that's something we'll have. It also includes the reduced rate with Guzman, and that's over a 6-year period. Scenario number 1 in this handout that you provided during the workshop.
This handout corresponds with these.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This summary page that was handed out tonight. So let me clarify there. That scenario doesn't include any gain over a 6-year period that would have been projected in this spreadsheet. It would basically say that there's 0 loss, 0 gain. 0 loss, 0 gain would be in this projected savings. It's not adding anything. So we're saying the net sum, 0 impact over the 6-year period. Does that make sense? So on scenario 1 that Kathy can pull up, it shows that as I just forecasted, water large capital projects were moved out, and it does include external financing. And then it states that sewer debt incurred on the outfall line for the estimated $4.5 million of the project.
So just for clarification, this has the new debt incurred for the outfall line plus the existing debt included for the wastewater treatment plant?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just want to make clear what all is in there.
And so when you're looking at this page, this overview page of what was handed out in the workshop, it would state that the joint utility reserve at the end of FY17, which would be the current fiscal year, would end at $9 million, and then the joint utility reserve at the end of FY22 would be at $5 million. So that's after these capital projects have been incurred and debt service payments have been paid out. I believe that's where we're at.
This is that scenario. And this is the.
Can we dim one of those lights over there so we can see this? Well, we don't have to get super moody.
So, Mayor, on this scenario, which is what we just pointed out, this shows that for FY18, this is an FY18 number. This is the water line. That would be a 10.5% increase on water. The wastewater line on this scenario is 45% increase on water, and the electric is a 0% increase. So for the immediate fiscal year, that shows the change. As we look at this chart, these percentages are then brought down to this area here. So this is the current average bill for, as we said, 5,000 or 6,000 gallons, 5,000 gallons, and 500 kilowatt hours, 548. So that's what we're showing the average bill at now. And again, this is average bill, not minimum or high bill. And this shows what after 1 year, what the increase monthly would be. So the average water goes from $32.20 to $35.58. That's roughly $3.38. The average wastewater goes from $36.50 to $52.93, and the electric bill would stay right there at the same number. The increase would be 13.4%, or in this case, $20, $19 and some change.
Is this on the website?
Yes, ma'am. So we have some of the scenarios that we presented on the website, and we'll put these others on there as well on the transparency. So this is that scenario. This right here is the combined utility fund. So that's what we're looking at when we're talking about at the end of 2017, we're showing it at $9 million. At the end of 18, we're showing it right there at that $9 million. At the end of 2019, we're showing $10 million. 2020, right at $11 million. And this is where the projects that, the electric projects come in for the substation and the transmission line. And so that's where we see the dip in that basically $8 million worth of projects. So that's that line. And then we show the buildup back up based on longer increases over time and less capital on those projects. Included in this, if Kathy were to move it around or scroll it up, it'll show individual funds. So in case you're concerned about what each individual fund would show.
Well, hang on. Don't. We start flipping around too much and numbers get way too confusing quickly. So, okay, so this is scenario 1 here, okay? And so this is factoring in the prepayment, but with no net change.
Correct. Well,
For electric.
Just the recovery of the
Right.
prepayment.
Right, okay. So this is where I have to ask, what is this based on as far as the Guzman recommendations? They had alternative 1, 2, and 3.
For the rate structure?
Yes.
With the differing base rates?
Right.
Right.
What is this based on?
This is their model. And everything with the financial, with the $2 million prepayment, that's what we had talked about last week, Raftellus was already provided that information within the model.
Right.
So they have presented various rate structures for the commission to select from.
Right, and they all three included the 2 million prepayment. Okay, I get that. What are these numbers, alternate 1, 2, or 3?
This is the basis for any one of those, in that, I don't know how to describe it. The average increase is, they're working with like the 10.5%, 45% on wastewater, but as they emphasize, depending on which rate structure was selected, for each individual customer, that percentage will differ, depending on which rate structure is selected.
Right. I
So-
guess that's my question. What rate structure is this based on?
Well, in theory,
Is
you're
that
looking
not-
at
It's not, okay.
at the picture, in theory, you're looking at these numbers here, 10.5, 45, and 0.
Right.
Being closer to scenario 3, which would be across the board.
Right.
But if you select scenario 1 and scenario 2, then you're changing those percentages based on who would be charged which increase.
Right.
Because scenario 3 for Raftellus means it's across the board. And that's pretty much what you're looking at here is this is across the board, this is what it's going to generate. The revenue streams are very close for 1, 2, and 3 based on how we predict
The
them.
revenue streams, but the rates aren't.
Right, because it's going to differ from each group. So that's one of those decisions ultimately that we have to determine is even though we put this percentage here and what the overall is going to be, then it has to determine, are we going to look at the higher base rates? Are we going to look at basing it on a usage rate, which would be based on each individual user? And then where does that spread go on the rate schedule? Do we focus more on commercial, less on residential? Do we focus on a higher user, would have a higher rate? And then we, as we said, we would basically create credits for conservation. So if you just think about scenario 3, just think about across the board for this number.
The alternate 3.
Right, that would be their across the board number in your projection.
So is that the same at the top of all of these scenarios, when you're saying across the board? Do we
In
have,
terms of
like-
the picture you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yes, so typically you're going to just say that that's your overall revenue increases.
Right, if that's, the percentage is the percentage of the increase in revenue generation.
In revenue generation, not rates. So that as the public's looking at this, that percentage doesn't mean that their specific rate goes up
Correct.
10.5%.
Right. So what the numbers is,
That's
this
really clear.
10.5, 45, and 0 end up resulting in a 13.4% increase to the overall
Revenues for the
revenue
city.
stream, but even the average bill. So
Right.
the average billing still focuses on, that's the increase, 13.4% for the utility bill. As proposed in this scenario with these factors.
Okay.
Well, we're not, I really need time to go over these, you guys. You know, I understand that, you know, the charts and stuff, but doing it on the fly, for me, for this to really settle in before I can even come up with a decent question, I have to look at these, and not in the next 5 minutes. Because what I'd really like to do is set them all out like this, you know, and really look at it and compare it. And I just don't feel that I could come up even with an intelligent question right now until I kind of factor this stuff in and make notes myself.
And totally understandable, but what we presented is just creating scenarios. So what we're asking tonight is, are there scenarios that you want to see us create? Because this is just staff putting together 4 scenarios for you to look at, because what we've already presented in the workshops and through Raftellus is all of this. They've already given you these numbers now for a month and a half, 2 months. We're just creating new scenarios as examples to potentially create new questions.
Okay, so were any of these scenarios where we paid off that sewer line instead of taking out a loan? Because I know the loan at the end of the 20 years is about 1.2 something million in interest?
And I don't know what the interest total number is, but if we go to scenario number 3, and what Kathy there is doing is looking at those interest numbers and then the payment towards that loan. So what she's doing is zeroing out if you put $4.2 million to pay the loan and take out the $287,000 a year. So right here, same scenario we just looked at. Everything in number 1 is included, and you still keep the same impact here, 10.5, 45, and 0, and you're going to say the same change to sewer, or the same change to the bill. None of this changes here in the top. What it shows is we're going to start out with $9 million, and then after we pay the $4.2 million plus the $2 million for the electric, we're down to here after 18. Then we're building up 19, we're building up 20. 2021, we're slightly above this line. 2022, we're significantly lower.
And so, hang on a second. So this number is, I get that it's our combined utility fund, but this is minimum total cash, operations and maintenance and restricted cash? That's what that blue line across is?
That's what the blue line is.
So that's what we need, the minimum amount we need to maintain operations and maintenance and our balances that we're required
And the
to have.
restricted balances, yes, ma'am.
Right.
That's why we're looking at that line as an overall combined utility fund, because we've got to get to this point
Right.
in 2022. So that includes that prepayment and no debt on sewer outfall line.
Does that also include the savings, adding into the savings we're getting with the electric now that we paid the 2 million? So, I mean, if you factor in that over the next 5 years?
So what it will include, and see, we can go into scenario 4 and then make the same change, because scenario 4 includes the $250,000 gain based on those WRP savings.
Okay.
A low number, as you had said before, pick that
Right.
low number. So if we go to scenario 4, that's where Kathy's switching over now, you'll notice that here she's going to go into here and add 4.2 million to that. And then we're going to zero out the others. And so then that's going to show us that result
Right, we still were.
with some revenue into there. And then if we go back up to the top of that one, just to show the same, these are different numbers. So in this scenario, starting out, this is 10.5, 30% and 0. So that's a lower sewer number and an overall increase for the average bill of 9.7%.
But we still don't make our minimum. Yeah.
It doesn't look different to me at all.
Which part? Well, the other was
The graph.
13.7%, and this is
She's talking
lower.
about- yeah, she's
Yeah,
talking about
this is now at 2.
It's even less.
This is now at below 2 million instead of at.
So even adding in that extra savings of electric, it's not.
But we reduced this number. We reduced this one by
So
10%.
Can we bump that back up to what we had initially?
We can.
Which number?
This
The
30%.
Yeah, I don't like it, but let's look at that and see what it does, because, holy cow.
To 45?
Yes.
Yes. And then the 14?
Mhm.
double line.
I think that's where it was at.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah, it's 4.
45, 45, 14, 4,
45, 14, and what?
4. Then it drops to 4 for 2 years and then 2.
What you were looking at was between the wastewater and the water, over 100% increase in utilities over 2 years period of time.
Probably the compounded, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was, you had them together.
So now once that populates in, then we'll go back to the main. And so
And we're still below though. It doesn't, yeah.
And so where it actually shows, so right here, you're back to the 13.4% increase. So that's an average bill increase of $20. And the second year with those numbers, that's another 17.8%. So composite here, you're looking at a $50 increase. The actual bill doesn't double until potentially 23, 24, 25.
How can you say that when it's already going up 45% each year?
Let me clarify, Mayor. That's the wastewater would go up to there, but the
Not the
overall
entire utility
average utility bill. See, if we look here, this is a great way to show the model. $147 average. Here in 2025, the increase could be potentially $117. And those are, we know, those are large increases over that period of time. So this factors in paying off prepaying Guzman, paying off the sewer outfall line, and then an initial increase of 45% on the sewer, 10% on the water, and 0% on the electric.
So instead of 60, you're looking at 55.5% increase.
We're actually looking at 13.4% increase if you look at the average bill. And that's when we say that just like that scenario, that creates a new scenario for us to look at. And I think this is one of the things that we said originally. We'd like to have this model open so you can look at, if you create another one, you just randomly pull one out of the sky and say, can you do it? Because if you're at home with the ones we've already done,
Yeah, we can't.
you can't
adjust
insert it as easy.
Right.
Which is why it's,
The problem is you got to study this
Well,
stuff
no
at
matter-
home before you know what questions to
Yeah,
ask.
no matter what scenario it is, everything's messed up in 2022.
it
No
definitely
matter
drops.
what you do. I mean, you could charge people 200% more, and it looks like it's still going to be below the line.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what we do.
That's
So,
where,
I mean, that's with prepaying a debt, without prepaying it, getting extra money, it's always going to be below that line.
that's why Raftellus originally recommended 60% on the first year, and maybe that was 30 or 40% the second year on wastewater.
But when they do 60 the first year, what's that actual increase percentage-wise on the bill? Because it's not actually the 60. Like right now, you've got it 55 and it's 13% increase.
You're
on the
saying this
bill.
45 and this 10
Right.
is 13? So if this number was 60,
60, yeah.
So first year 60?
Yeah,
and then we just leave the others just to see.
yeah. There's no point. Yeah.
So then at 60, you'll see
Oh, we're
the
barely
20
kissing the line.
22 gets us to hover around the line, and the overall increase first year would be 17.1% increase and an estimated $26.
It's just, yeah.
This is no good.
You know, it's $26 the first year, but then you
Right.
got to add on another $26 the second year,
That's
and it's just too high for a lot of residences. We have to find some kind of, and I don't know how to avoid the apocalypse of 2022.
One of the things that we recommend to staff is although we wanted to lay out the 5-year plan because we know that's very important for our customers and our citizens, we want to be able to make a positive move in 2018. We want to be able to lay out a number that we feel our customers will be able to handle and that will still get us moving in the right direction for our utilities.
Yeah, ideally, not that I would ever want to have this conversation every year, but ideally, we make 1-year adjustments that move us in the right direction. And so I'll just throw this out, and then instructions to staff are, we start looking at every possible outside funding. I realize they're drying up, I realize that, but we start looking at every possible outside funding source to help augment this so that those revenues look differently.
Yeah, well, that would be,
But I mean,
you know,
we
the
can't
cherry on the
count
cake,
that.
but
Right.
maybe we don't have the cherries. And plus, we have to add on to this another $3.50 you're going to add to the trash collection. Is that in there?
This doesn't include sewer. This is just electric, water.
I know.
It doesn't.
But when I'm looking at a bottom line and talking to someone who calls me,
Right.
and I say, your average bill is going to go up 20-something dollars in the next year, I've got to add another $3.50 onto that. And the tax on top of that.
350.
The operations of the
They're gonna add
thought we were talking
$350.
solid collection. We would look at whether it be $1, $2.
Okay,
The point at
I
which-
hadn't heard the 350.
Well, the point at which we have to cover over a period of time, the same kind of thing. And then we still have the discussion that hangs out with curbside.
Recycling, yeah.
Oh, well, that's off the table. Come on. I mean, that's just gone. Nobody's gonna, a great idea, but who can afford it?
If we're on top of all of this already.
True.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, you've got to cut back somewhere. You just can't, you just can't pull money out of the sky and hope you can find funding. But you've got to cut back.
So with this scenario, if we're looking at the success of making it to 2022 and having almost enough to get to this century mark here, this Mercator line, that still shows a 60%. I know that's not what we're shooting for year number one. So we just have to really put in a number there for what we think is
And
getting
all-
us closer.
I have another question. So, part of it was, and I don't know if it's just easier for bookkeeping or just easier to explain to people, that it's just added to the base rate. So does it still even out about the same if it was usage versus base rate?
Right, so what these numbers are looking at here is what that overall is going to generate. So the scenarios determine whether or not it's put onto a base rate or if it's put onto a usage, that being the question. It will add up to be the same based on these revenue projections here. What the goal of the base rate is to cover operations and maintenance. That's the goal of a base rate. That's why you start implementing it. That's part of Raftelis's report. What you're trying to do with the usage charges is to cover the capital outlay moving forward. So that would cover the extra capital outlay outside of it. As we would say, if you increase the base rate of wastewater to the number that would cover operation and maintenance, including both the debts, then you're already increasing $16+ per month.
Right.
Not a staff recommendation.
So why would water go up 50% in the next 5 years if it's pretty much taking care of itself now?
Well, that's the operational side.
Okay.
That's not the capital outlay side.
not
So,
paying for the dredging
so these numbers are going to cover the projects that have to happen. If you recall from our
Okay.
other.
All right, I got it, thank you. I don't know, I mean, I'm almost thinking, as commission, we have to come up with a base dollar amount, like your bill's gonna go up by, $20 a month, and I think of the poor people on Social Security, which means that's $240 a year, which is a lot, especially when they only got a $1 increase per month. And I know, they can go, well, we don't offer it in our utilities, but I know they do through, we offer the spreading it out.
Right.
But it's still going to be the same amount of money, whether you're spreading it out or not. So, and I know they offer an energy thing through the state, but it's
State hasn't got any money.
yeah, but they do that that
Assistance
thing,
program.
assisted program for people. I think it's in the wintertime and mainly for heat or electric.
And Mayor, and I think that's a good point in terms of where Commissioner McClure's going. If we looked at a number or percentage, and then we go back and determine which way the rate structure would change, that'll still get us to an endpoint. So whether or not we're looking at a base rate versus the usage rate, we can still build that rate structure there, and it may, as we've talked before, it may create some of a protected class one way or the other in terms of whose bill will be impacted more versus who would be impacted less.
If we decide on just a lump sum base rate increase? Is that what you just said?
Well, I'm saying start out with the number.
The number that their bill would increase
Right.
in a month. So if the average bill is 147 and it's going to go up to 167. And then taking your parts, the little magic with this great little thing you've got here that changes everything. Bottom line, when we're talking to our constituents, they want to know how much their bill's going to go up. Not how it got there, not the percentage of this, not what we have to pay for capital, they just want to know how much their bill's going to go up. And I would like to factor in, when we think about this, and let's say the most we could possibly ask of people is $18 a month. Let's say we did that. But to me, that's got to include that extra $3.50 we're putting on the trash, because that's a monthly bill too. And even though...
So just for the sake of argument, say we put it at a flat 20. I'm not saying I like it.
Right.
Just to try to flesh some of this out. Say if we started year one with a flat increase of $20. So that puts it, the $167.97 would be the average bill.
Which would probably go right back up to scenario one, one of these where it was 45%.
Probably pretty close.
A year at 218 instead of 60. Right? Close.
That's almost exactly.
And so out of that $20, we've got to figure out how much of it, some of it goes to wastewater, some of it goes to water, and some of it goes to solid waste.
Right. And then we just go, you've heard of black holes, kind of like magnetic fields.
Oh, is
We
it a
go
rabbit hole
from
or a black hole?
2021 to 2023, and then we'll be fine, with no 2022.
We just skipped a year.
2022? You just skip it.
Black
year
hole.
off.
It's a black hole.
Just black hole it.
Take it out.
What's the worst case scenario that could happen when our reserves are only 2 million? Wasn't there a point in this city where there was no million?
Yes.
There was.
All right, so the earth we would not stop, we do revolve around the sun, right?
Currently, yes.
The problem is, though, that number is operations and maintenance.
I know, but it's temporary, it's only a year.
But if we can't make it that year, that's the problem. We have to be able to get through that year without laying off all of our utility staff.
Well, actually, what this number represents is this has all of the expenditures out of it. What we've established is that we need to maintain a reserve that's equivalent of 25%.
This is a reserve in 2022. So everything's been paid for, and we only have a couple $1 million.
Okay, well, that's not how this was explained just a little bit ago.
Yeah, it's 25% of the operation maintenance and the restricted cash. That's the line. That's what this is still.
So this is not what we need to continue to function.
No, that's the reserve based on 25% of O&M and restricted cash.
So how do we see, for each of those years, what operation and maintenance is, what those minimums are?
What these minimums are.
What the numbers are or what this is?
Draw us a line with the basic minimums for operation and maintenance.
Without a reserve. Is that correct,
Well,
Mayor?
we have to have some reserve.
No, but I mean, just showing us that without the
Because what
reserve.
you're telling us is that this line that goes across is reserve amounts.
What we're saying is that for a reserve, the minimum reserve for the joint utility should be the equivalent of 25% of its operating costs, plus then any external reserves like are required from
Required debt
and
service.
such. That this is what
Okay.
we've established.
Who says it's 25%?
That's the direction that we gave Raftellus. The commission can certainly direct some other baseline. This was just so that we have something.
Right, to give them to work with. Right.
And the idea is that if something did happen.
No, I understand.
That there is that we have a reserve to be able to respond to whatever that emergency might be.
Okay, so let me try this again. Okay, this line going across
Correct.
is operations, maintenance, required debt service, plus 25% reserve.
No. 25% of operations plus the required reserve.
It's not operation, it's not maintenance. It's 25% of operation and maintenance.
It's our savings account.
That's right.
Correct.
It is our savings account. So again, heaven forbid, and then we have that black hole, if we dip down to a little over $2 million for just 1 year, could something go wrong? Yes. What would happen if we didn't have $3 million that year? What would we have to do? And the chances of that happening are slim, especially when you're looking at it's going up, 1, 2, 3, okay, bad year, apocalypse, but then it goes up again. And if nothing happens in that year, it still continues to go up, even if we don't maintain 2.2 or whatever million it is.
It's a gamble, but I would love to see what those numbers are without the 25%.
I don't know which number. Are you
The
talking about the
reserve.
operation number?
No, she's talking
Whatever that
about
line going across the
the
screen.
combined utility fund, which is our savings account.
That line, the one going horizontally across.
Why, so you just want us to take it off?
I
No,
want to see it without the 25%.
you're basing it on saving out 25%, right?
And I realize you may not be able to manipulate this program to make it do it, but I'd like to see what those numbers are. And so we may not be able to see that tonight. I get that. Because they may not have set up this model that way.
It is, it's in there. I just need to
Find it,
look
yeah.
for where.
But do you understand what I'm saying? I'd like to see what just the baseline minimum is. I'm not saying I want to go there. I just would like to see it.
And I think that's what we would need to understand is what is that baseline minimum? Is it only covering debt reserve?
Well, but you guys just said this line is 25% of operations and maintenance and debt reserve.
Correct.
So take out the 25% of operations and maintenance.
And have no reserve other than the debt reserve.
I just want to see the numbers, yes.
Okay, debt reserve on the wastewater plant is a total of $555,000.
555. What?
$555,000.
555.
And that's one annual payment for debt, and then the required repair and replacement. And that's just specific to the wastewater plant.
Okay, so this is wastewater plant, all of our debt, required debt reserves.
Correct.
555,000 annually.
Correct. That's the reserve we have to maintain. That's not the annual payment. That's what we have
Okay.
to maintain in a reserve.
Okay,
So that's the,
And that's assuming that.
and that's
we have-
wastewater only.
That's the wastewater treatment plant only, because right now, this
Plant.
particular scenario assumes that we are not taking.
Right,
out
that we're
any
paying
debt on
cash
the
for the, right. So that's wastewater plant only, 555,000.
Correct.
And we show here in 2022, even at the minimum, we're still over 2 million.
Correct.
But that's all combined, right? All
That's all
combined
combined.
utilities.
Right.
Utilities combined.
Right.
So we don't have the numbers, the bare minimums for electric and for water.
There is no debt in either one of those.
There's no, okay, so this is it, 555,000. Right, no, I understand.
we're assuming payment in cash
Right.
on this scenario for sewer outfall line. 4.2 million paid in cash.
Okay, I got you.
Again, it's, instead of, I mean, I love this program, I gotta tell you
So-
that. I love this program.
I do too.
But if, to constantly get it so that 2022 is above the horizontal line,
So what if we played with the horizontal line? What if we made, instead of saying 25%,
10.
or even 20? I mean, let's start playing with that number and see what it does. I'm not saying I like it, because I get it. If we have something catastrophic happen, then we go to the state or the federal government pleading and begging. I get that.
This is a percentage that
Right.
the city establishes.
Right.
There's
So let's play with
nothing
it.
From the
Right.
state of a minimum that we have to maintain.
Right, so let's play with it and see what that does.
And so-
Anywhere from 10 to 20%.
Let's start there. I mean,
And is that still continuing the assumption that we're not assuming any debt on the outfall line? Or you want to see it both ways?
Why can't we see it? I mean,
we're just adding 12 more hours a day to Kathy's days.
I know.
We can see it, we'll just, yeah.
What I keep looking at with paying off the sewer is the $1.25 million we're saving in interest, and I realize we can't pay all stuff off, but if we could and not break the bank and still have reserve and then slowly build up as we're doing, that would be, to me, optimum.
Both the wastewater treatment plant loan and the outfall loan have no prepayment penalties.
That's good.
So we
Right.
could go into it, and then as the reserves build up, as we did with other loans within the joint utility, we could pay them off
Right.
at some point.
So, and then we only owe half,
I mean, it's an option
I know.
as the fund balances grow.
Right.
the debt we have on the sewer, on the plant is only 500,000?
No, that's the
No.
restricted.
That's
Oh.
just the reserve.
Right, that's what we have to
Three.
have in our account at all
Oh,
times.
okay, I see,
Two?
got it.
Yeah,
I haven't had enough caffeine.
around 3 million.
3 million?
Yeah, about 3 million.
Ballpark?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't pay off until 2030.
Right,
So this is why
Okay.
it doesn't do us as good just to take
their lifetime.
printed scenarios.
Right.
This is why we said, hey, let's have the discussion here so you can,
No, definitely.
I mean, you can pull the number down and then we can kick that out because then it makes sense. But then commission says, hey, we're going to change what our restricted number is.
I know.
And we move forward. And I think that's a wonderful idea in terms of where we're at on these percentages, is that we make those changes
Yeah, let's look at
and we
the
accept the reality of
restricted.
it.
And then, once we look at the restricted and what those numbers are, and hopefully, we kiss that line in 2022, then we can tell our neighbors and our friends and stuff, your bill is going to go up by $18
But
a
don't you dare
month.
flush anything odd down your toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah, catastrophic.
Because if you
doesn't-
cause issues,
Anything.
you have problems.
Yeah.
Scary.
Sorry.
It is, but it is a year, it could
So we'll
be
tell them it's a
handled.
partnership.
Yeah.
We're going to reduce our reserves, but, yeah.
And what it potentially does is change how those future capital projects are handled. If
Right.
we've
It
budgeted
does.
for the electric to be cash payments, to not have debt in that electric, because that's
Right.
been our plan all along,
Then we may have to incur
if
it.
something happens here in 2020, then potentially we have less dollars to go ahead and do the transmission line and then to do the substation.
Right.
But I would like to look at, instead of the arbitrary 25, I would like,
Yeah. I'd
maybe
like to
10,
play with
15, 20, Kathy? Just because we want you to stay up till 2 a.m. today.
I know how you guys will charge, so.
So we'll keep the same scenario, prepayment, pay off sewer outfall line, change that line just to show you where the line's at. I mean, I don't know in the end if that's going to make
Well,
as
we
much
don't
value.
either, but we need to see. I mean, we
And
don't know
then,
until.
and then you can look at a change on percentages on increases based on that, potentially.
I'd
Starting
almost
place.
like to just start with $1 and then shoot it up from there.
Let's see these other
You know,
numbers
what's,
first.
and so that was basically then, Josh, what you just said, scenario number 3.
No.
No?
So it's actually, everything considered, it's scenario number 4, and instead of paying, scenario number 4 has paying $2 million on the sewer outfall line, and then still financing 2.2.
Oh, okay, all right.
But what it is for scenario 4 now is paying all 4.2, no financing at all of sewer outfall.
Okay, well, wait a minute. How did we just make that jump?
Which part?
Paying all 4.2.
So we said that here. So the scenario we're looking at on the board shows
Right.
paying all 4.2 million. That's what we're talking
Sewer
about.
out the line. Okay, sorry.
So what I'm saying is on scenario 4 on this sheet of paper, we only paid basically half of the sewer outfall line in
Got it.
cash.
Right.
And then we financed the other
The other.
2.2 million. So the only change you would make on this scenario 4 would be to pay all 4.2 million, nothing financed on sewer outfall line. That is scenario 4. That's the only change you would have to make.
Okay.
So here's, it's neither here nor there on the rates, but I just want to verify if I'm remembering something correctly. So on the initial loan that we were approved for the sewer outfall line, there was also a grant component, but it did not kick in. We weren't able to use grant funding until we expended all of the loan funding.
Actually, because the project was so big, that became a non-issue. And we have already drawn down the $350,000 of the grant.
Of the grant, okay. Okay, I didn't know, and so,
Yeah, we didn't lose it.
We didn't lose
Once
it.
we got over the 3 million or so, then
They just
that
said have
wasn't
it,
an
okay.
issue any longer.
Okay.
So.
but that was how it was set up initially, right? We had to expend all the
But we were
loan
looking
funds.
at a much lower,
Gotcha, okay.
much smaller. project.
Wow, 350, yeah, okay.
If I could interrupt, I thought at last meeting you were also going to look at extending the substation and the transmission line out to the future.
I don't recall that we discussed
Not the
that.
substation. The
We talked about
substation,
water upgrades. But not electric.
The sub and the transmission line have been extended to the point where they're at that place now on these numbers, that's where we're projecting, working with Farmington and us together, that's where it'll be constructed.
But I really understood that because that's what's creating the whole problem here. That expenditure money plus the $2 million that went out tonight. If you could extend those out further. I've heard about, for over 25 years now, we've needed this line, we've needed maybe a substation. Our projections here for the next 5 years, we are not growing. As I understand, the main reason for that increase is in substation is to increase the capacity for peak power.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never understood that was the main reason.
And backup. But the city has existed for 50-some years without having that backup. That's why I brought up last meeting, this is an insurance policy, the backup.
How
And the
about
line.
you?
So if you extend it out another 4 years, or portions of it or something, then that's going to change your whole scenario.
You're right, it would. Am I correct, Mr. George, in that we have contractual, no, but am I?
The problem is for 15 years, we've been planning Farmington to put this line in. They've got their money in place.
Right.
And it's scheduled to go in 21 and 22.
Right. And do we not have contractual agreements with them at this
Well,
point?
Not yet.
Not yet?
We've got verbal promises.
Okay.
Tell them about the money.
Come before commission. So, I mean, there's some options. I mean, I cannot, if you tell me to, I can go back to Farmington and say, hey, okay, here's where we're at with our money. We can't do it until this date. Or you can take a look, and if you don't have the funding in 22, we go out and we get a loan for it. The electric department can pay a loan. I mean, those are options for you.
Okay, thank you.
They built for less than 5 mil, or 8 mil, excuse me.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from commission?
Or other scenario or changes that you want us to add?
Were we going to look at that scenario of just a flat 20 and then splitting it up between? Was that one of the things?
Well, I was just, I was thinking if we had come to that decision, because again, when people ask us,
What is it?
it's okay for us to know all this, but when people ask us, the bottom line is, how much more do I
They want
have?
to know the flat amount that their bill's going to go.
Yes.
And that includes the trash.
And I want to include the trash, so if it comes up where
How
it's
that would- how that would break
$18,
down.
let's say we don't do the full, if it's $18, and then Kathy does her magic and does it up the line, and suddenly 2022 doesn't exist, and everything is cherry.
And we have to look at a two-step process. We really, if we want to decide what that average increase is, we start with the average increase, and we put that number in, and we put whatever numbers are going to be here on the top. Then the second decision process is, which rate schedule, which way do we do it?
Right.
So that's the second decision. Then we would have to look at individual users. It would be like Commissioner McClure putting her bill here, me putting mine here.
I'll bring mine in.
And then we compare
Hi.
based on what the fee schedule is, and we say, what is a lower user and what's an
True.
average of 5.
Absolutely.
Because that's going to be the issue. This number's only going to get
Right.
average users, and we could give you a list of who all is going to fall under this average user, but I can guarantee you, the way Commissioner McClure described her bill,
No.
it's not an average user.
No, my average is about $90 a month.
And see, and we're not an average user because we're going to be higher than that with our
Right.
household and as yours. So that's our third step in trying to determine, then we just take some volunteers and say, these are what the uses are. And I would volunteer my bill, and
I
you've
will.
talked about it.
Sure.
Then we say, this is how it's going to impact it. So when the person asks you, hey, what's it going to impact my bill? Well, I have 3 kids, 2 grown-ups, this is what our bill is. That can then we can give them a closer look at how it's going to impact the bill.
That's a really good idea, Josh.
Well, and we
Because
talked
in
about
a lot
that
of time when I'm
last
talking
one.
about people who are unrestricted, and they're retired and stuff like that, and there may only be 1 or 2 people per household, generally there is, then they're not looking at, I'm going from 147 because they're probably not there anyway, and it would be helpful. It really would. And I think when they do an average family, it's usually like a family of 4.
Typically.
About, especially with water usage, because they use about 1,000 gallons a week, maybe 1,500.
And it goes
I only
back
know
to
this
that-
because I used to haul water.
It goes back to that makeup of, I know that's a deep question when someone says that, is say, I don't care what you're telling me in terms of who I've got in my household, but there's a lot of questions and scenarios. If you just say, we're a high-traffic house, this is what we use, this is what you can expect, these averages are going to be very extreme. I believe it's just like what Roxana said last time, when you're breaking up the chemistry of a household, you got to look at males, females, but we can do that, and I think that's the third step. So first step, we figure out what that number is at our next. Second step is we look at which alternative do we want to do, and then third step is we do actual bills and how that'll impact the bill. And that's one of the things we were talking to the school system about, is this is how your overall bill is going to be impacted, not just your electric.
Right.
And that's why it's a critical element, because their sewer is going to be impacted, their water is going to be impacted, not just their
Yeah,
solar.
they've only been working on electric.
That's right. It's only been
Right.
one focus when it has to be complete bill.
Yeah, electric's not the big part of my bill. It's sewer.
So what we can do, Mayor, is we can get this information and we can relay that back to commission. Then we really just need to set how we want our discussion to go. We can set that for the next June meeting. If we want to do that, we can run that scenario, email it out to you, and then if we want to meet before, we can set it before. We're still in good time that by final budget, we can make our decision based on our current meeting schedule. Because we're still,
Utilities?
for the utilities.
Okay.
I mean, we can still approve that as our final budget
Gotcha. By the end
in,
of July.
in
Okay.
June or
And that's end of July, final budget?
Final would be by July 31st, and that goes to making sure that the state
Okay.
gets us preliminary approval back.
Because we kind of wanted to wait and see what was happening with the state with,
Right, that gives us that time. also,
okay,
special-
all right.
which is
Yeah.
a Special session.
But that doesn't impact our,
No, our-
having
No, I
our
know,
final
I know.
approval.
I know.
Yeah, we just want to wait on that to see if they do anything that's going to be extreme.
So even with this, what you guys have come up with here, it makes it 100% clearer. Instead of telling someone their bill's going to go up by 55%, say it's going to be total average 13. Just knowing which bank of
Yeah.
numbers to look at,
And
because
especially the 13% compared to the initial 60 that was.
Yes.
Yeah, that's-
Yes.
Yeah.
And if someone looks at their bill, let's say $90 times, Kathy, yours was, times 13%, and I would say it's going to go up, what, $11 a month? It's just off the top of my head. So if it is 13%, then we're looking at that instead of 60%. I mean, that's just a scary number for too many people. And again, since we're not going to have growth, obviously, in Aztec for a while, according to the not survey, but,
Census.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Utility rate discussion from the commission?
I just had one more thing, Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure, so that one screen, I'm not sure which tab it was, that showed all the capital improvement, you guys trimmed that down? You
We
guys- you
did.
said when
The items were
stopped.
removed. We took those out, and then the items that we talked about moving out, just like the water plant or the reservoir, moved that out an additional 2 years. So we removed any of the capital that we discussed about and then moved the other out.
2 additional years.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, Kathy.
On that note then next on the agenda, we'll move into city manager, commissioner, and attorney reports.
No report, Mayor.
Yeah, no report here. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just have MPO on Thursday, that's it.
No report.
Commissioner McClure.
I was just going to I was going to do a real quick shout out, for Aztec Hardware. I went in there today, and Trevor at Aztec Hardware, and this was great about a small town, he actually fabricated a piece that I needed for a staircase railing because I lost a piece. So, that's why we love our small town. That's it, Mayor.
Okay. Our attorney's not here, so department reports. All right. Nobody better dare stand up at this point. All right. All right, then I would entertain a motion for adjournment. All right, thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us on this lovely, fun